Hey there, fellow citizens of the internet. Welcome to the Kabandana podcast. Today, I have with me Sharlene Halbert. I hope I said that right. And today, she is a relationship and intimacy coach, and that is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about relationships. So, without any further ado, Sharlene, welcome to the Kabandana podcast.
Thank you, Moses. I really appreciate you having me on here with you. Looking forward to it, our conversation.
Awesome. So, well, what is a relationship coach? Like, what do you do? What what does that entail?
So what I work with, I've chosen a particular kind of area of relationships that I'm passionate about, which is working with couples that are in committed relationships,
Okay.
and so supporting them to create the kind of relationships that are worthy of the love that they have for each other. Because often couples love each other, but they don't really love the relationship they're in. And
Hmm.
so I work with them to support them in discovering what it is that they really want in their relationships. Because often people are very focused on what it is that they don't want or what they're not getting. So
Right.
helping them to create that and map out what they want for the future, and then learning the skills and new ways of understanding themselves and each other so that they can create more love and connection and intimacy and passion and desire and
Hmm.
joy, all the things that they want in their relationships. So
Yeah, yeah. You just listed a whole set of words there, and love is the one that sticks. Is the very first one that you mentioned, and we throw this word around quite a lot, right?
yeah.
And before you and I actually started recording, you mentioned that you also help people not only love the other person but love themselves.
Yeah.
What what does that mean? Like there's on the surface of things, it seems so. Wait, you have to learn to love yourself, but there is a lot in that. So can you expand on that a little bit for me?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to start with the fact that I think love means different things to different people. And very often, and this is not just love, by the way, I think any word that we use or any feeling that we want to have or experience that we want to have is very personal. And
Hmm.
so often people come into relationships, or all of us come to relationships with a definition of what those things mean for us. And often what gets unstuck or becomes unstuck is
Hmm.
that that definition is not the same for your partner. And so getting clear on not just love but respect and understanding and all of those things, what do they mean to me? Because that's all based on our past experiences, on our beliefs, our rules for life, our cultures, our families. We build this kind of idea of what love looks like. So sometimes in my work it's about helping people understand what that actually means for themselves, because we very
Hmm.
rarely identify that. And then understanding the other person's experience as well. And in any relationship, you really, if you want to have a better relationship, there's a lot of people that say you need to improve your relationship with yourself first before you can have a relationship. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily subscribe to that theory. I think that
Okay.
both are possible, and I think it's not the same for everybody. So some
Hmm.
people need to. There's work that needs to be done before they get into a relationship or into a new relationship, that comes about this process of learning to appreciate yourself and understand yourself and what it is that you really want and what's underneath those needs and desires. And then there's the work that you do inside the relationship that is also about both. So whenever I'm working with a couple, it's always about individual growth as well as the growth inside the relationship. So I don't know if that
Okay.
fully answers your question, but a lot of people often come because they want their partner to change, which clearly
Hmm.
is never going to get them the relationship that they want,
Okay.
because it's about growth of individual as well as the relationship itself. So
Hmm. Okay. So then in this process of trying to make the other person change, uh, I'm guessing that's like a bad foundation. Like, 'cause even if she succeeded in that, well, what does that mean if you're gonna be living with this person that you forced, I suppose you forced to change. So okay, my question is like, what leads people to come to you, a relationship coach? Like, is there a lot of stigma? Is there a lot of shame in coming to a relationship coach? What's the biggest bottleneck and hesitancy that keeps people from finding a relationship coach?
I think there's probably a few different things, and I think it's a really great question, because one of the things that I feel is that, first of all, coaching for relationships is quite new. Most people think of therapy and counselling when they think of healing your relationship or fixing a relationship. As a coach, I come from a very different perspective, if you like. So a lot of people are like, well, what's a coach? Or they come to me thinking that their idea of relationship coaching is somebody who's going to stick up for their side of the story. Like they come to you because they want validation of their experience, which is often about validation of their story, and that the other person needs to change. I think there are a lot of things. First of all, that's scary for people. Like, what if the coach therapist doesn't side with me? Which, of course, in my work it's not how it works, because I understand that both people need to make changes if a relationship is going to change, even if it looks like one person really is the problem, and from all outside. If you go to your friends and you share your story, they're going to go, yeah, you're right, they're wrong. In the way that I view relationships and the work that I do, it's very much that both people contribute in some way or another. Even if you've got somebody who feels like they're giving everything to the relationship and doing everything for the relationship, there'll be something that they're not understanding, or something they're creating in the environment that doesn't allow the other person to show up in the way that maybe is more authentic for them. And as you said, if you change the other person, now you've got a person who's not authentically themselves, and good luck with a healthy relationship with that. But I think, yes, there's stigma around relationships, almost more than anything else. It's kind of, I find it quite strange actually sometimes, because you'll have people that quite happily talk about going to a therapist for their own work, but they don't want to talk about the fact that their relationship isn't working in some way. So there's a lot of shame around it. I think people feel that they should be able to have a successful relationship, and they don't want to let anybody know or talk about the fact that it's not working. That they feel, that we have all these misnomers that you get married, or you get into a relationship and suddenly, everything's going to be fine after that. So if it's not, there's something wrong with me. And that is really hard for people to accept. And so breaking that myth is really what I want to do. Is, why would you not have somebody support you in helping you see what you can't see? It's always there's a great saying that I heard once in a personal development course that I was in, that you don't know what you don't know. And often it's the thing, I've tried everything, but you haven't tried the things that you don't know yet that could potentially make the difference. And so finding support, we do it in businesses. You wouldn't run a business without getting some advice and support. Even having children, there's advice and support for having kids, and it's okay to get help with that. And I'd love to be able to really smash some of those myths, and not waiting until it's so broken that it's hard to fix. I would say, I also work as a wedding celebrant and officiant at weddings, and I love what I always give the couples a gift. And the gift is an hour's coaching session with me if they would like it for free. Because I think if you were to start your relationship out right and learn, start to learn some of the skills, and not wait till it's so incredibly broken that, there would be so many more relationships that would last, and there would be so much less pain and hurt, quite frankly. That's how I see it. So
yeah. Man, that is well said. You mentioned earlier that one of the expectations that someone has when they're coming to a coach or to a therapist is expect the therapist to side with them. To like typically when they go to a friend, they're like, yeah, he's wrong or she's wrong, she did this. And when you said that, it reminded me of some of my own relationships with the friends that I have that have come to me for advices, relationship advice, personal advice, and whatnot. And the friends that have come to me more than once are the ones that I did not take their sides right away. Are the ones that I said, hey, yeah, you really messed up at this point. Do you really understand why you messed up? Yeah, I do. Okay, now let's get into the friendship side and then, try to unfold this. But the ones that you just side with right away, they don't really come back, right? So it's like the people that have given a great advice based on not just siding with them right away, but like saying, hey, here's where you messed up, or here is where your accountability should have entered the equation, and you seem to be running away from this part. Let's address it, let's acknowledge it, and then let's find a solution. Those are the ones that, second time, third time, as life unfolds and misery befalls upon us all at some point, they keep coming back. So that is a very important and good point that you made. A therapist is not there to take your side per se. But okay, anyways,
It's beautiful. Well, I love what you're saying, Moses, because I think that's, in speaking to your listeners, I think this is what you said is really actually important, and I think it's important not to gloss over, because being challenged is how we grow. And it's only, and a relationship needs to grow just like people need to grow. And so, I remember having, there was a client I had I was working with him, not his wife, but there was a massive big betrayals on both sides, and they were really struggling. And so I was working with him, and, he had many friends, and she had friends, and all of them sided with each other. So, there were the ones that sided with him, ones that sided with her, and you could see why that was the case. There was one person who was a friend of both of theirs who was willing to challenge the both of them. And I think having friends who challenge you is way more valuable than someone who just stands up for you alone. And I think I like to think of myself as that with my friends as well, because I think sometimes we need to be challenged about the way we see things. Otherwise we don't grow, we stay stuck in our own perspective, and staying in your own perspective is never going to shift problems in your own life or in your relationships. That's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable thing to be on the receiving end of, but understanding that is necessary, and making sure that you've got friends, especially, about your relationship, that challenge you is important, I think. So it's beautiful that you're that for your friends.
Yeah. I think that is the hallmark of being. Speaking of of relationships, a friendship is a form of relationship, and that is one of the hallmarks of being a good friend. Is being able to tell your friend that they are wrong when they are wrong. Right. I had a conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago, and they came to me when they messed up on something, and they give me a long 30-minute spiel about it. And once they stopped talking, I just said, you know what I'm about to say, right? They're like, yeah, I know. But they still came to me, right? Because it's like, he's going to step on my toes. But I know that at the end of the day, he's going to give me, the truth, at least tentatively, right? None of us really have like a rubric for life. We don't have like a menu of or a manual, so to speak. But so another thing that I want to touch on, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, was an interpersonal relationship, right? The relationship that you have with yourself. And this might get a little bit complicated if I can explain it correctly, but the person that I was 15 years ago, and the person that I was 5 years ago, and the person that I am today, we're the same person, but I have different relationships with those people, if you would. And we're all the same people. But I'm like, when I think about 15 years ago and who I was, I know that guy, I kind of understand that guy, but not really. And he's just, 15 years ago, so I kind of know what he liked. And would you say that in long-term monogamous relationships, there is a time where it's been 15, 20 years, and the person that they, let's say, fell in love with, for lack of a better word, and the person that they are with now, there seems to be a distance there, and they can't quite, you're not the person that I fell in love with, or you used to like this, and that is true. So how do you go about helping a couple in that situation where someone has changed so much, good or bad, I don't know, but it's just, I know that it's part of growing, of being a human being, which just change over time. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, it's a really important question, Moses, and I think my one word answer is curiosity, because I think it is absolutely true. In fact, we all change and grow, and there's different, we have different things that happen to us in life. There are different life stages that we all go through that change who we are. I mean, if you are a student and you meet your partner, and then you get jobs and you become involved in your career, there's going to be different things that were important to you at that time in your life than when you were a student. When you start a family, now something that's different again. When one thing that's getting talked about a lot more is what happens for women during the perimenopausal, menopausal time. That's a time in a woman's life that can last between 5 and 15 years. And one of the hallmarks of that particular time in life is questioning, who am I? And often women report suddenly they change what they enjoy, and they no longer like what they used to like, and the things that they used to get joy out of doesn't bring them joy anymore. The old midlife male crisis that people, that's become a bit of a joke, is men have a similar thing. They reach a particular point in life. I prefer to call it a midlife review. I think if it's something that you go through unconsciously, it is a crisis. But if you are aware of it and you consciously move through that stage of your life, it's actually an opportunity to review what's important to you. And so, first of all, there's the understanding that we all grow and change whether we like it or not. Some people in greater ways than others. It can depend on what happens to you when parents die or when there's ill health. That changes your perspective on life. I was listening actually to a video yesterday, Simon Sinek, I think his name is how you pronounce his name. And he was talking about how he used to be, he was an advertising guy, and he had an office that was right opposite the Twin Towers, and he was there the day that it collapsed. And he said it just totally changed his life. He went from being someone who was a successful advertising executive, to someone who said, what am I doing advertising things for people that they don't even want or need? And it totally changed the trajectory of his life. And he started looking at, what was his purpose. And so that things totally change our lives. And then there's the small things. So I think it's really important for couples, and one of the things that I work with couples is how to stay curious about yourself as well as each other through the years. And that is about not taking things for granted. It's about having regular conversations about these kinds of things, having check-ins for your relationship to see, where are we at now? What do we want? To continually, it's not, when you say I do when you get married, and I know not everybody gets married, and certainly outside of the US, marriages in Europe a lot less than in Australia than other places, but when you make a commitment to someone in whatever way, that's when the relationship begins. It's not the end. It's not like, great, we've made that commitment, and that's the point at which you want to continually revise. What are our goals for our relationship? Who are we now? What's important to us? And having those open conversations, and not putting your partner also in a box. I know you. I know how you're going to react. I know what you want. Instead, being open to asking. And I have a couple that I worked with who did a lot of this with each other. It's like, I think you think this, or I think he thinks that, or I think she thinks this, or this is what I think. And the person would be sitting right there. And so I'd say, well, why don't you tell me what it is that you think and feel? And I think we do this in lots of different ways in relationships, especially over the long term. And it's that letting go of curiosity. So bringing curiosity back to who am I? Who is my partner? What is our relationship? What do we need to move through at this point is really, really important and challenging, because knowing things is what gives us certainty. So it's having to step out of that certainty into uncertainty on a regular basis, which is challenging for us all.
I love that. Curiosity is, I don't know what life would be like without curiosity. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into
Well, you could probably guess if you look at at relationships, for example, that are not working so well, or when people have challenges with their kids, their teenagers. A lot of that's what the world looks like when there's no curiosity. And actually, probably if you look at the politics that we have in the world right now and the way that we all treat each other, there's no curiosity anymore. There's my side, your side, and if you don't see my side, then you're on the other side, whether that's true or not. There's not a lot of middle ground, and I struggle with that sometimes, just from being someone who has a tendency to see the grey areas. Just watching the world become more divided, and why I think, working with relationships is even more important than ever, because this is where we learn how to, where children learn how to love and appreciate and respect the people that are closest to you. If you can't do that, how does the rest of the world function? How do we get out in the world and be that way with others? So it's important.
So sometimes you'll hear this in TV shows and even in real life. A partner asks the other partner a question, and the other partner responds with something to the terms of, well, if you love me, then you would know da 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 da.
Yeah.
What is wrong with that statement? And how can we get rid of that way of thinking? I don't know if that question makes any sense. Like, how do you, because like on one side you're like, well, if I really love you, then I guess I would know that, but and I do love you, but I don't know how you want to. So does that mean I don't love you? Like what's the how do you go about having a conversation like that without insulting the other person's dignity?
Oh, that's a really very deep and specific question, and I think it's a good one, because if people were asking that question, there would be a lot of room to move in a relationship. So I think first of all is understanding our deeper needs. For it. So very often that kind of statement, like, if you loved me, you would know, what that would say to me if I heard someone say that is that person has a rule for what it means to be loved, and or a belief about what love should look like, and that it's worth examining that, because when we all have rules around let's take love, because that's the one that you used. So if you loved me, you would know that. There is a rule that person has that limits their ability to experience love. So one of the things that I would, because if my partner has to know exactly what I need in order to feel loved, especially given the previous conversation that thing that we were just talking about, that it's different for everybody, it changes, we all grow, that there is, if I have that you need to know everything about me without me telling you, then number one, there's no room for me to grow. There's no room for you to see me in any different way. There's also it's very difficult for me to see the ways that you do love me. And so I would just call that a really limiting rule and not very helpful. So there is, if you're the person hearing that from someone, then there is, tell me about that. Like, find out more about what that means. What is it that what does it mean for you to feel loved, and look at how can you help each other to broaden your definition of what love looks like. How can you help each other to feel the love that's being offered, and how can you expand the way that you give love to help that person feel love in a more expanded way. Does that make sense to you, what I've said?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I almost always asking in podcasts or conversations like this is when a solution is provided to me, I often talk about the distance between having a solution and actually implementing that solution.
Yes.
So one of the things that it wasn't always natural to me, but now more or less it is if I'm having a conversation with someone that I truly think it's worth having, meaning like we're both trying to solve a problem within the confines of a relationship, right? The person will say their point, and I will repeat their point back to them until they acknowledge that the way that I repeated it is truly representative of what they meant to say.
Beautiful.
From the minute that I learned that and actually putting it into practice, my goodness, on the personal side, right, it's a lot of growth. But on the other side as well, it's not easy, because you're trying to have a conversation with me, and every point that you make, I'm trying to repeat that back to you until you nod that I actually said it right, and it gets super annoying, and sometimes it comes across as though I'm condescending, like I'm treating you like a baby, right? So you're saying that. So I learned that, okay, a good concept that's really helpful, it makes sense intellectually and conceptually, but then when it comes to putting into practice, there's often a huge gap there. So yes, my question here is, do you find it, or what is one of the things that one of the contention point that you find with couples once you've given them the tools to either they want to improve their communication, or they want to improve their sex life, or whatever it is they want to improve, you give them the tools, and they agree that those are good tools they've given them, but when it comes to actually implementing them, there's just a big distance. What are some of those things that people struggle with from a conceptual standpoint to the implementation? I guess that's my question. That was like a really drawn out question there.
No, it's beautiful. It's great. I think there's probably many things, but the ones that come up for me certainly is what you just described. So that, like, a tool of communication, and I think we forget sometimes that. And I want to acknowledge you for what I hear you say is that you that you do a bit of trial and error. You try something, it didn't work, you try something else, and I want to honor you for that, because I think that's often what's missing. People are always afraid, and especially if you've had a particular way that things have been going, a particular pattern of communication. I often get, well, we tried it and it didn't work. It's like, and so that, I think there's a common misunderstanding that knowledge is power. And I don't subscribe to that theory. I subscribe to the theory that knowledge is only power when you put it into action. And often the action is the bit that's missing. And then there's the understanding that these things are a skill. And you would never give someone a computer for the first time and say, I'll show you how to use it. Okay, now go. And you would expect that I now know how to use a computer. I mean, that's just absurd. Well, maybe not for young kids now, but certainly my generation. But a skill is something that you have to do it over and over and over and over, and practice it and refine it to get good at it. And so I think people forget that that's what is necessary. So things like what you were describing, learning to listen to each other. So I've got couples that, we talk about this concept of listening, feeding back what you heard. Maybe you don't do it with every sentence, but give each other a period of time, and putting it inside a container sometimes is really helpful, or getting them to practice with me is what I do a lot of as well, because sometimes you give it to people and they take it away and they practice and all their old stuff shows up, and then suddenly they're in an argument again. So, sometimes practicing is useful, but there's those skills of listening is one that is a real challenge for people. Also, just the desire, the learning to understand each other. So often I talk about lots of different perspectives on a particular issue. So, for example, a complaint that someone has, it's looking at the underlying needs beneath that. And I find one of the things that's really challenging for people is they feel that if there's a difference in, this is often, we're just too different. When you help people with understanding those differences, there's still this desire that, okay, I understand your perspective, but I still want you to do it like me. I still want you to understand it like me. So you hear people say, I understand, but, which means now you haven't understood. Now you're trying to make the person into you. So I think that's that's a big challenge that people have, especially when they're learning to understand things from a different perspective. And I think just sometimes also some of the big challenges are the willingness to own that responsibility for their part in something, especially when there's been a lot of resentment and hurt, giving up some of those feelings that are getting in the way, or only having the ability or the desire to see the hurt and pain and not look for the hope and what else is there, because there's always more there than what you're looking at, always. And so I think that's a big challenge for people too. Like if there's a lot of resentment and hurt and you ask them, look for something that your partner does that's loving, because there will always be something, but the desire to hang on to the hurt and resentment limits their ability to even look for that. And so there's a lot of work sometimes in breaking that down and helping people to see their strengths. So, I always say, the past is really useful for, it's particularly in a relationship, the past is always useful for looking at what worked when things were going well. But where people usually go is they look at the past to find more evidence for the hurt they now feel. And so helping people to look for the strengths they have and what's underneath their criticisms, and then practicing the ability to look for something else is a big one.
This is not exactly like a good segue, but as you were saying, this last part, this question kind of came to mind. Do you find it that there is upon understanding your partner's past, right, all of a sudden you have, I don't know if resentment is the right word. So let's say you find out about their partner or their partners, or and then all of a sudden, like, you just feel some sort of way. Like, is that a thing that couples wrestle with? And like, how do you go about amending that? I don't know if that's that question even makes any sense.
So if I understand the question is it important to understand your partner's past history for when
like let's say a couple has been together for like, I don't know, 15 years or something, everything's great, and then one of the partners finds out for one reason or another, or through, maybe it can be through a conversation between the two, and then you find out their sexual past, for example, and then all of a sudden you feel in some sort of way. Is that a thing that occurs, or that's not a thing at all?
Yeah, for in some relationships that's absolutely the case, and that's, I think those times it's important to have those skills of how to talk about your emotions. So often, and I was actually just writing something about this today, the difference between our emotions and our feelings. And most often where couples get stuck is that they talk about their feelings and what they think they need, instead of what their real needs are, and coming from their emotions. So for example, if you find out about how many sexual partners your partner has had when you've been together 15 years, for example, if there's you have the emotion that you experience, and an emotion is something you feel in your body. It's a physical thing. And they've actually researched this. Emotions actually start in our body, not here or anywhere else. And so you experiencing, there's an emotion that you experience, and then there's the story that you have about it, or the judgment, or the way that you see it, or the belief that you have about it. And most people are communicating from their story about it, or the meaning they've attached to something, instead of the emotion that they're experiencing, which is the only true, authentic piece, if you like. So because there are many, many stories that you could have about that. So someone tells you about their sexual past, and you could be someone, because of the way that you view the world, your perspective on things, you would say, oh, well, the past's in the past, and hope you had a good time with those 300 people you slept before me. Or you have someone who makes it mean that this person lied to you, or that this person is no longer trustworthy. But if you go into, what is the emotion I feel? Wow, I feel really sad about that, or I feel hurt by that, and you start to share from that place. That's what's called, I don't remember who termed this, but it's the inarguable truth. How you feel about something is the only thing you cannot argue with. If I say to you, I feel sad, Moses, you can't go, no, you don't, Charlene. You don't feel sad. Well, you would never say that. But if I say, you never listened to me, you can go, well, yes, I do. I always listen to you. That's arguable. We can now have a big argument. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, I do. But if you were to say, I feel sad, then there's a conversation that can be had about what you make that mean. And now you can get closer together by that discovery of that thing from the past. And I think that emotional mastery is really missing in a lot of relationships, and very important, so that you can handle these things along the way. Because there's always going to be something that you didn't share with your partner, not because you maybe didn't think of it, or because you didn't want to at that time, or you weren't ready to, or you were afraid of their reaction, whatever. So it's important to be building on this emotional mastery and working together to be able to communicate from a place of connection, rather than, and recognizing all the stories that you have and the judgments that you have that are not the real truth, which is how you feel.
Yeah, speaking of connection, this is another tangent. That's just how my mind works. Like, as you're speaking, just random things come up. How does within the confines of a relationship, romantic relationship, and you don't have to talk about particular clients, so to speak, but just humans that are in a romantic relationship in general, do you see the effects or problems or no problems that come with pornography, right? Like, is that I'm just throwing that giant blanket term at you, pornography within the confines of a romantic relationship. How does that play out?
It is a big problem in lots of relationships, and there's no, again, I think it's really important for all of us to understand that no relationship is the same, and there's no one way to deal with things. So yes, pornography, I haven't had a lot of clients where that's been an issue, but I have had some where it is. And how you deal with that is it's a conversation that needs to be had. First of all, there's lots of reasons that pornography becomes is inside a relationship. If it's not interfering with a relationship, for some couples, they can actually watch porn together, for example, and use it as a way to as one of their ways of building desire and connection with each other. Where pornography is a massive problem, of course, is where it takes the place of or contributes to the treatment or lack of integrity inside the relationship. So the first thing is, understanding the beliefs that both have about pornography, because that's important. I had a a client where she discovered that her partner was consuming porn, and their sexual relationship was not great. And for her, it was a massive issue that he had that, and how she experienced that. Going back to this conversation about our emotional responses, she'd made that mean that he was disrespecting her, that he was watching porn. And very often it's not about disrespect, it's about something else. So the meaning that she attached to that drove them further apart. And it was something that was really, really painful for her. So there's the first thing of him being able to understand her pain around that, and then to also look at what drives that behavior. So, and this can be explained with, I work a lot with something called the 6 human needs. And the needs for certain, that we all humans have the 6 basic needs: the need for certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. And if we meet 3 or 2 or more of those needs at a very high level, like if we were to scale along 0 to 10, how you meet that need with a particular behavior, if you meet 2 or more needs at the same time at a very high level, then you'll create an addiction, either in a positive way or a negative one. And so, if helping her to understand that it was not out of disrespect for her that he was consuming porn, but more that he had needs that he was not meeting for himself in a positive way. And then how can they work together, have a conversation about that, and start to help each other heal in that way, was really important. And so it's, yes, porn can be a massive problem in relationships. Sometimes it's easily solved, sometimes it's not, but it is learning to understand the deeper needs underneath that, and how to meet those needs in different ways, and how to understand what you can bring to the relationship for that partner to help them meet those needs as well in a different way.
Yeah, that helps clarify things. I mean, like if you're listening through or scrolling through all the corners of the internet, you'll get answers that range from, yes, watching pornography is equivalent to cheating, essentially. Right? And some people will, if their partner does that, they will literally end it, because it's like, yeah, you cheated with someone else, right? All the way to, I don't know what you're talking about. Pornography is nothing. It doesn't have any effect. So I figured just throw the umbrella term and kind of let you dissect it there. So
and as I said, I think it's that saying that, again, this goes with what we were talking about before too, about what does love mean? What's love mean to you? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to your partner? What does it mean? What does respect mean? And starting to look at what are the rules we have around that. And there's nothing wrong with someone saying, if pornography is a no-go zone, but that's important to communicate. And then also looking at understanding what's underneath different behaviors is really, really helpful, whatever the behavior is, and looking to see, is it a no-go? If it's a no-go, then that's, you're entitled to that. But you can always choose to leave a relationship if that's not what you want, or you can have a conversation to see whether there's a way that you can loosen those rules to maintain that love and connection and find a way through. That's a decision that people need to make.
It's a shame that it's been an hour already and I haven't gotten to ask you, how is it that you ended up in this field? I haven't asked that yet.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, it found me, Moses, I think, really. So I grew up with parents who loved each other very much, but they struggled a lot in their relationship, and I was one of 5 children. So my parents at a very young age had 5 kids, and my father was a farmer, so he had a massive piece of land in Australia that required a lot of work, and he and my mother were both very big in contributing to the community and so on. They had a lot of values in common, but they struggled, and so and what I saw in their relationship was how they tried very hard to make it work for themselves and for us. And that was, they were born in the 30s, so, but they did personal development courses, they did relationship courses, they did things to try and improve their relationship and to make it one that was deserving of the love they had. And so I think that was a really big early story for me. And then I had my own relationships that didn't last for various reasons, and sometimes were relationships where there was a lot of love, and just knowing that love was just not enough because of the way that we didn't communicate and connect together. And so I came to coaching actually through an English student that I had, who I helped change his career, helped him take the steps to change his career. And he said to me, "You're not just my English teacher, you're also my coach." And I went, "Oh." I'd been looking for what my next career was, so that was it. And then I came across, through the school that I studied my coaching through, I came across advanced relationship coaching training, and it just was like an aha moment. This is exactly where I want to be. This is the next phase for me in my life. And so I did the training and moved into this area of relationships because it fitted perfectly with what I believed in and what I wanted to contribute to the world next. So
yeah. What is your absolute earliest memory that you can think of?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually have very, very early memories, interestingly enough. So I have memories of when I believe I was about 2 or 3, and we traveled across the country in a car, which is crossing the desert, the Nullarbor Plain, before it had proper roads. And my mother, I think, was pregnant with my next sister, I think. So there were 3 of us, and then my mum was pregnant. So I would have been, 2. And I remember, funnily enough, going and visiting my aunt and uncle, and I had a cousin who was the same age as me, and we went outside to play. It was there was dew on the grass. It was a cold morning, and we went and played in the cubby house, and we didn't wear shoes. We came back, and my parents didn't mind that I had no shoes on, but her father minded very much. And I remember standing there while she was being absolutely given a shellacking for going outside without shoes on, and he couldn't tell me off because I wasn't his. So I remember, actually, it's interesting because what I remember is feeling how unfair that was, and that there was a level, it's funny because I've never thought about it until you just now, that there was that unjustness of her being scolded when I didn't get scolded didn't make sense to me. And maybe that's why I've ended up, my life has always been about contributing to making more justice in the world and what's fair. Maybe that's it. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Amazing. Wow, Sharlene Halbert, thank you so much for coming to the Moses Kabandana podcast and sharing your knowledge. This is an area that a lot of people don't talk enough with good authority, right? And I just want to say thank you for coming and sharing that knowledge here on the podcast. Is there anything that you'd like to let the audience walk away with?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Moses, for this opportunity to talk with your people and to have this conversation with you. I've really enjoyed it. I think if there's one thing to go away with, it is I want people to have hope for their relationships. Not all relationships survive. Not all relationships are the right relationships for all of your life. But often there is a lot more that can be done to have a relationship that really serves you both and serves your children if you have them. And to know that sometimes it's what you don't know that you don't know that is the secret to finding the love and the intimacy and the connection that you really, really want. So that's what I would like to finish with, I guess.
Okay. And if people want to follow you, do you have social media, a website, or anything like that? If people want to follow you, do you have like a social media or anything like that?
Yes, I do. I'm everywhere. It takes up all my weeks. Yes, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn with Sharlene Halbert Coach. I have a website, charlenehalbert.com, and I also have a newsletter that if people are interested, I have my weekly relationship reflections about various aspects of relationships. If people are interested in that, they can contact me, coach@charlenehalbert.com, and I can get you on the list for that if that's of any interest to you. And if people want to have a free call with me to see whether working with me is something that would support them in having the kind of relationship they really crave and deserve, then they can find that on my website and on LinkedIn and all of those social media outlets. So
Awesome. Sharlene Halbert, thank you for coming to the Moses Kabandana podcast.
thank you so much, Moses, for all that you do.